July 22, 1960. Kapustin Yar Proving Grounds, Soviet Union. The air above the Volga steppe shimmers with heat. Dust rises in columns as experimental machines, monsters of welded steel and revolutionary engineering, crawl across the hardpan in formation. Nikita Khrushchev stands in the observation tower, squinting against the glare, watching the parade of heavy tanks that represent a decade of classified research and billions of rubles. Among them, a machine that looks like nothing else on Earth. 4 independent tracks, a hull shaped like a flattened ellipse, a turret crowned with a rifled cannon longer than a telephone pole. Object 279. The tank designed to survive the apocalypse. Khrushchev watches it lumber past. 60 metric tons of armor plate and firepower built to punch through irradiated wastelands where conventional tanks would melt into slag. Then he speaks. One sentence, one decree that ends the entire program. No tank exceeding 37 metric tons will be adopted by the Soviet armed forces. The heavy tank era dies in the desert that afternoon. Object 279 never fires a shot in anger, never crosses a nuclear battlefield, never leads the breakthrough it was engineered for. But the question remains, whispered in the archives and the museum halls where its lone survivor now rests. What was it really protecting against? And why did Moscow fear it more than NATO ever did? Rewind 3 years. Leningrad, 1957. The Kirov plant, birthplace of the IS series heavy tanks that broke the back of the Wehrmacht, receives new operational requirements from the Supreme Command Reserve. The problem is existential. NATO has deployed tactical nuclear weapons across Western Europe. American artillery batteries carry W-33 nuclear shells. British Canberras fly with Redbeard atomic bombs. The Rhine is now a tripwire for Armageddon. Soviet war planners face a paradox. Doctrine demands armoured spearheads drive to the English Channel within weeks of war's outbreak. But how do you advance tanks across terrain pulverized by kiloton-range explosions? Conventional armour buckles under nuclear overpressure. Tracks snap on rubble fields. Crews cook inside sealed compartments as radiation turns steel into an oven. The assignment lands on the desk of L.S. Troyanov, an engineer whose reputation survived Stalin's purges. His design bureau is tasked with the impossible, a breakthrough tank that can absorb a nuclear shockwave, cross liquefied soil, fight through fallout, and still deliver 130 meters of precision firepower. Not a tank to prevent nuclear war, a tank to win it. Across the Iron Curtain, NATO takes a different approach. The American M103 and British Conqueror mount 120 mm guns on conventional hulls, both designed to destroy Soviet heavy tanks in stand-up fights. Neither is built to survive what comes after both sides press the button. The philosophical divide is stark. NATO plans to use nukes to stop tank battles. The Soviets plan to fight through them. Object 279 is born from that logic. It is not a weapon of deterrence. It is a weapon of aftermath. The first thing you notice is the shape. Not angular like every tank since the Renault FT. Not boxy like the IS-3 or the Centurion. Elliptical. The hull cross-section resembles a flying saucer, rounded, seamless, cast in massive, irregular sections. This is no aesthetic choice. Every curve is calculated to deflect nuclear blast overpressure. Flat surfaces catch shock waves and flip tanks like toys. The Object 279's elliptical profile lets the blast wash over, around, through, anything but under. The armor is staggering. The turret front, 319 millimeters of cast steel at 30 to 50 degree angles. The hull front, 269 millimeters sloped at 45 to 75 degrees. Effective thickness against kinetic penetrators exceeds 400 millimeters in places. Thin spaced skirts, anti-heat panels wrap the entire perimeter, designed to detonate shaped charge warheads before they reach the main armor. The whole machine weighs 60 metric tons. Some sources cite 66 with full combat load. But the true madness is the running gear. 4 independent tracks. Not paired tracks sharing bogies, but 4 separate track assemblies arranged in 2 per side, mounted on hollow longitudinal beams. Those beams, they double as fuel tanks. It's engineering bordering on absurdity until you understand the purpose. Ground pressure, 0.6 kilograms per square centimeter, lighter than a human footprint. The Object 279 is designed to float across swamps, soft soils, check hedgehogs, and the rubble fields left by atomic weapons. Terrain that would trap an M103 or a Conqueror becomes navigable. Protruding from the turret is the main armament, the 130 mm M65 rifled gun, 60 calibers long. It fires separate loading ammunition, projectile and charge loaded independently, with a semi-automatic assist system that achieves 5 to 7 rounds per minute. The fire control system is cutting edge for 1959. A Groza 2-plane stabilizer, optical rangefinder, L2 night sight with active infrared searchlight. The coaxial 14.5 mm Sarakazo KVT heavy machine gun carries 800 rounds, enough to shred light armor and infantry at range. Under the hood, a 2DG8M 16-cylinder diesel engine, 1,000 horsepower, enough to push 60 tons to 55 kilometers per hour, 34 miles per hour on flat ground. Operational range, 300 kilometers. The crew compartment is sealed with full NBC protection. Chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear filtration systems. Automated fire suppression, smoke generators, heating and cooling to keep the crew functional in irradiated wastelands where outside temperatures swing from sub-zero to scorching. This is not a tank. This is a lifeboat for the end of the world. While Troyanov's team welded Object 279 together in Leningrad, NATO armor development followed a different logic. The American M103 heavy tank, 58 tons, 120 mm gun, conventional track layout designed to engage Soviet IS-3s at range. The British Conqueror, 66 tons, 120 mm L1 gun, slightly better armor and mobility than the M103, but still a traditional heavy tank destroyer. Both were built to kill enemy armor. Neither was built to survive the battlefield itself. NATO's nuclear strategy was preemptive. Tactical nukes existed to stop Soviet armored waves before they broke through, to crater roads, vaporize assembly areas, and render entire sectors impassable. The assumption, if the Soviets advance, we go nuclear first. The corollary, if we go nuclear first, tank-on-tank battles become irrelevant. Object 279 was designed for the day that assumption failed, for the scenario where both sides exchange nuclear blows and the rubble-strewn gap between the Elbe and the Rhine becomes contested ground. In that nightmare, the M103 and Conqueror are museum pieces. Object 279 is a spearhead. Western intelligence tracked Soviet heavy tank programs, IS-4, T-10, the various object prototypes, but Object 279 remained obscure. Only 1 to 3 prototypes were ever built. No photographs reached NATO analysts until the Cold War's twilight. Moscow kept its Apocalypse tank in the shadows, a classified hedge against the unthinkable. Late 1959. The prototype rolls out of the Kirov plant for trials. Engineers quickly discover the 4-track system is a nightmare. Maneuverability is poor. Steering requires complex differential braking across 4 independent assemblies. Mechanical complexity demands specialized tools and training. Maintenance hours per operational hour exceed acceptable thresholds. Worse, the low ground pressure that should enable swamp crossings has the opposite effect in certain conditions. The tracks sink deeper into mud, increasing resistance rather than flotation. The tank is too heavy for Soviet military bridges. a critical flaw for homeland defense scenarios where retreating forces must cross rivers, and the height, 2.64 meters, impossible to reduce without compromising the elliptical hull's blast deflection geometry. Then comes July 22, 1960, Kapustin Yar. Khrushchev's demonstration. The premier is obsessed with missiles. He believes the future of warfare lies in guided rockets, not steel leviathans. The IT-1 missile tank, a low-profile platform mounting anti-tank guided missiles, represents his vision. Heavy tanks are expensive, logistically burdensome, and philosophically obsolete. If nuclear war comes, why armor the breakthrough when you can simply missile strike the objective? Khrushchev watches Object 279 crawl past. Then he issues the decree, 37 metric tons maximum. Every heavy tank program, IS series, T-10 variants, Object 279, Object 770, dies that afternoon. All 3 Object 279 prototypes are scrapped. Except one. The sole survivor is trucked to the UFO Tank Museum, where it sits in silence for 6 decades. The irony is thick enough to cut with a bayonet. Object 279 was cancelled because heavy tanks were deemed obsolete in the nuclear age, yet it was designed for the nuclear age. The machine built to survive atomic war was killed by the fear of atomic war. Soviet doctrine shifted. Mobile medium tanks, T-62, T-64, T-72 replaced the heavy breakthrough concept. Speed and numbers over armor and firepower. Object 279 represents the absolute engineering limit of steel armor technology. After it, the Soviets realized no amount of welded plate could guarantee survival in a nuclear exchange. Composite armor, reactive armor, active protection systems, the future lay elsewhere. But in 2022, something remarkable happened. The UFO Tank Museum restored Object 279 to running condition. Video surfaced online, the beast moving under its own power for the first time since Khrushchev's decree. The 2DG-8M engine roaring, 4 tracks grinding across the museum grounds, 60 tons of Cold War paranoia resurrected during another war on European soil. The restored tank is a relic, a monument to a war that never happened. But it's also a question mark. Was Object 279 cancelled because it failed the trials, or because it forced Moscow to confront the true horror of the conflict it was preparing for? When you build a tank to survive the apocalypse, you acknowledge the apocalypse is thinkable, plannable, winnable. Maybe Khrushchev looked at Object 279 and saw not a weapon, but a confession. Proof that the Soviet General Staff believed nuclear war was inevitable, that they were designing for the aftermath, that somewhere in a classified bunker, planners were calculating how many of these machines would be needed to reach the channel through radioactive ash. And maybe that was too honest, too final. So the program died. The tanks were scrapped. The lone survivor became a museum curiosity, a UFO-shaped ghost haunting the margins of history. A reminder that some weapons are too terrible even for those who build them. Or perhaps, just perhaps, a reminder that the most dangerous weapon is the one you convince yourself you'll never use until you do.